What is going on, everybody, and welcome back once again. My name is Jordan, also known as JMonster. I want to thank you for joining me for another replay battle, and my apologies for the long absence. Been very, very busy with the patch and with real-life stuff as well, which hasn't left me a lot of time for the playing of video games. However, I am proud to tell you all that that cold streak has come to an end. And I've got a whole lot of things coming out over the next few days. Some new stuff as well. We're going to have a Tomb King's campaign with Queen Khalida, the conclusion to our Vortex campaign. But before we even consider talking about any of that, let's see what I've got for you today. I've got a couple of showcase battles. The first one is going to be a Gondor versus Dol Amroth battle. And Gondor has really been kicked around as a faction for a real long time. But hopefully this video today, seeing them in action, will change your opinion of them somewhat. But in any case, let's take a look at the Gondor forces being commanded by yours truly. I've brought, I believe, 4 units of the Gondor infantry with their full upgrade, so they go from it's like a heavy mail to the fully plate mailed version that we've all come to know and love, if you're willing to spend enough money on upgrades, and in this case I happen to be so. So I've got 4 units of the Gondor infantry, and over here I've got the Axemen of Lasarnach with their full upgrades as well. Now, as you can see, they've merged with the Axe Noble unit, and once you upgrade them, they basically count as having plate armor, so I think they've got like 11 armor or something incredible like that. One of the things that you need to keep in mind with upgrades in 3rd Age Reforged in the 0.95 patch, I'm not sure if this applies generally across Medieval 2, but testing has revealed that basically one upgrade that says it only gives you 1 armor actually gives you the equivalent of 2. So with 2 upgrades on a unit like this, they actually go up by 4. So yeah, they are indeed at 11, which means that they are extremely resilient to arrow fire, which is a nice thing for a shock infantry unit like them. Anyway, moving on over here, I've got a unit of Wardens of the White Tower as my elite pick. Very, very strong heavy infantry. They are expensive, however, so you want to be careful with them. You don't want to get them surrounded or beat down by AP infantry and things like that. Over here, I've got 3 units of Gondor Spearmen. 2 of them have armor upgrades. This is the first tier of upgrade. You can see there they've got the like the plated shoulders and the full mail surcoat. And I think they got some greaves as well. But yeah, not quite as impressive as their plate armored cousins, the infantry, but still good enough to hold the line. And one of them, I think, is running around with just the basic heavy mail. Yeah, you can see them over here. Out in front, I've got a couple units of Caer Andros Marksmen, formerly the Citadel Guard Marksmen, who I think in 0.91 use one-handed longswords, but in 0.95 they have been given 2-handed swords. So this is very much a hybrid unit, and you pay for it in the army composition phase. Now, they've got very few men, and they cost about 950, but damn can they do some work, and woe betide any non-elite cavalry that charges into these guys, because they will give as good as they get. Over here, I've got a unit of Veterans of Osgiliath with their full armor upgrades as well. Now, they've got 3 stages, and I think they start at like 8, and they end up with like a huge amount of armor. So they are very, very resilient units. They've also got Ranger quality range, so it's one of the non... They don't have BP like Rangers do. They've got a little bit more numbers, but they are more expensive to balance that out. They're about 150 more expensive than a unit of Rangers of Ithilien. But they make excellent tanks, and yeah, they're definitely a range superiority unit, a damage sponge that you can use to soak up the archer fire of more deadly archer units from your opponent. But I think that... Whoop, a little bit of lag there. I think that does it for my infantry force. So let's take a look at some of my cavalry. There's some new things to see here as well. The Pinath Galen cavalry, who previously were just kind of okay. Now they've lost their bonus versus cavalry. They've got the -3 malice that all Lancer cavalry units get, but they are significantly improved. They've got a decent amount. I think they've got like 7 or 8 damage in melee, a lot of armor, and those big shields as well keep them well protected from arrows alongside their heavy mail armor. So they are quite resilient to being shot down, and they are a solid Lancer unit as well. And this is very much a replacement for the Gondor Knights. So now the Gondor Knight unit is confined essentially to being a bodyguard. So over here we have a General's Bodyguard unit, which is where my General's going to be. And I think this is a new addition as well. You got Gandalf out in front there. All of the various, what would you call them? The various bodyguards for Gondor have different officers for them. So this one has Gandalf. I think the elite rangers, like the Minas Ithil Rangers, have Faramir. I think the spears, like the Shielded Fountain Guard, have Boromir. All around, it's you get basically the full spectrum of cool Gondor heroes which is a nice little addition. But that does it for my army. Let's go ahead and let's see what my opponent has brought to the battle today. Now, across the field for me, we have the Kingdom of Rune being commanded by Sin of the Dark Cloud, who foolishly forgot to bring the rest of his army. No, I'm just kidding. Sin just wanted to watch, just wanted to spectate on this battle. So he's brought a unit of Dragon's Wrath Guildsmen who, if you have not seen the reveal for these units on UMAD Commander's channel, I recommend that you go and check that out. It is a battle between myself and him, and it is pretty damn good. It's reasonably close right down to the end. But yeah, the Dragon's Wrath Guildsmen, just wanted to show them off a little bit in case you guys hadn't seen them yet. I won't tell you anything else about them though. You can go and watch UMAD Commander's video to get the skinny. But in any case, let's take a look at my actual opponent, that being the forces of Dol Amroth, being commanded by Cappy, one of our testers. He's brought a very interesting build. He's got a unit here of Swan Knights, who are heavy melee cavalry. As you can see, they've got two-handed, well, they've got Zweihanders, so yeah, they're a two-handed sword unit that are very potent against other cavalry. Very much, I would say the focus of Dol Amroth in terms of their cavalry is very balanced. They've got more melee cavalry than is typical, but they've got less lancers than, say, a faction like Gondor Rohan, so they strike a nice balance. But in any case, he's also got a couple units of Tarnostian Guard, one or two units of civilians who are... I'm unsure of the place that these guys occupy in the current game. I think they were originally added as a unit for scenarios, so if you like a defend the civilians sort of scenario, things like that. But currently they are available to a number of different rosters. They are very weak though. I think they have AP, but they've got like 2 attack and stuff like that, and like 1 melee defense. So they're very easy to kill, but they are an okay cannon fodder unit that they can be irritating, which is about all you'd expect from a unit that costs 300. But in the back here, actually, this is really cool. Got a couple units of the Black Swan Vanguard, who are replacing the dismounted Swan Knights that you guys have come to know and love since Vanilla 3.2 Third Age. These guys are armed with maces, and as a result are armor-piercing. So it gives Dol Amroth a little bit more of an armor-piercing variant, or an armor-piercing option for the rest of their army, so they don't have to rely solely on the halberds. But yeah, it's definitely a good change. They are quite expensive, however, costing about 900 or so to bring, and very low on numbers, so you want to be careful with how you use them. They definitely want to be used as a support unit, I would say, with the numbers like that. In the back here, we have a unit of White Knights, who I'm sure we're all familiar with the White Knights at this point. Now, there are many different Knight units in the game, and because the White Knights don't have lances and therefore don't have the deadly charge of many other Knights, they were a little bit, in my opinion, underpowered in previous versions of the patch build, but that has since been fixed, and now they have been given +3, I think, on their cavalry bonus, so they've got a grand total of 10, making them extremely deadly. Definitely as scary as wargs, even more so than wargs, I would say, except for the fact that they don't have AP. So yeah, the White Knights, something you need to watch out for, and naturally a small unit like this that is very expensive will have 2 HP. Now he's also got a couple units of the Knights of the Silver Swan, who are relatively unchanged, very heavily armored, but they are lancers, so they're not nearly as good against other cavalry as they were in previous iterations. Now over here we have a fun little addition. You can really see, so the merchant units have become mercenaries, and they all have a different kind of texture or skin that reflects their allegiance to a certain faction that they're available to. So this is the Dol Amroth version, and the mercenary crossbowmen can be very deadly, but as you can see, they are small and quite expensive, costing about 800 or so to bring. But damn, if left on their own and used wisely, these guys can do a ton of work. Now, out here we have a front line, a very small front line, in fact, composed of 3 units of Thelon Halberdiers, who are some of the finest Halberdiers in the game. They are a little bit low on number, so what I'm thinking is they may get an increase to their numbers, and we'll see where their stats fall after that. But at the moment, with 123, they are just okay. They've got good armor, good defense, but the lack of numbers really does play against them. And he's got some archers out here as well. He's also got some hidden archers as well. We'll talk about those in a second. 3 units of the Doran Urnol archers, who are just the regular Dol Amroth archers. These guys are unupgraded, and I think they're going to be getting an armor buff in the next patch. I think currently they have 4, but they will be getting 6. And let's see. He's got a significant hidden archer corps, which I realized after I kind of did a head count, essentially, for his army and tallied up the price. I was like, there's a lot of hidden stuff here. So he's got 2 units, I believe 2 units, or maybe just 1 unit of the Nimrodel Rangers, and a couple units as well of the Blackroot Vale Archers. So Dol Amroth has a higher than average number of Rangers available to them, so units with BP, which means that they are very deadly against hordes, but especially against cavalry. from what I understand. BP is a very strong stat versus cavalry, so I definitely got to be aware of that and try to maneuver around it. But in any case, that just about does it for the army comps. Let's go ahead and let's get into the battle. I hope you guys enjoy it. So the battle begins after we have both come a fairly significant distance towards one another to basically meet in the middle here. And I'm going to use my superior range on my veterans of Osgiliath to leverage basically the range pressure that these guys can put down into causing my opponent to move forward. So he can't really just sit here in a ranged fight with me and win for the most part. Now I've got the range on them in order to be able to put a lot of pressure on those Dol Amroth archers, and if I can do that, I can pick apart certain assets of his army, and then I can begin to move in with the infantry fight when I'm feeling comfortable enough to do so. And in the end, that's an exchange that my opponent, a little bit of lag there, does not want to pay. So he's going to begin to move forward here with his heavily armored halberd battalions, and I'm going to start to put some focus fire down into these guys, try and whittle them down as much as possible, because they are very, very strong on the offensive. On the defensive as well, I find that halberds in general shine most when you can get things to run into them rather than have them run into other units. But in an offensive push like this, they are actually quite swift, as you can see, and yeah, generally they can do very, very well for themselves. But let's pop over here onto the flanks, and you can see that my opponent is moving forward with his mercenary crossbows. Now I'm worried about the pressure he's going to put on my Pynth-Galen cavalry, so I'm going to start to fall them back. And since he's now within range of my Carandros archers, I can just sit there and tank the crossbow fire with my Gondor spearmen, who are going to take a fair amount of damage from that. It's not going to be fun for them to have to sit there and take those AP missiles, but I am going to be able to do a fair amount of damage to him in this exchange with my highly accurate Carandros archers. So I can start to put some range pressure on these guys now, and with their low numbers and lack of a shield, they can't really stand up to it all that well. But let's take a look at what's going on here on the front lines. You can see I'm not going to wait for my opponent to come to me. I am actually going to charge forward a little bit here and try and surround his units in pockets. Now I want to kind of stagger his advance a little bit so that I can move in on both sides and try and surround him. So as I move in with my Gondor infantry, I'm also going to attack with my reserve units of Lossarnach axemen. Now we're here to get another unit of halberds that are moving forward basically unsupported, so I've got this big line of axemen moving forward to engage basically a number of his units all at once. I'm going to stagger their advance here, get in there with my axemen, try and get some of their charge bonus moving, and then charge forward with my infantry as well. And now, because he doesn't have a whole lot of heavy infantry of his own, his advance is going to end up being very, very broken. So it's going to be fairly easy for me to just get in there and surround this these large concentrated pockets of his halberds backed up with a little bit of civilians. Now you can see he's actually moved his archer companies forward. Now that my infantry are not so much facing forward, he's going to be able to get some decent flank shots off there. So definitely a good move on the part of my opponent. You can see that my Gondor infantry are not going to be able to take advantage of their fairly significant shield bonus getting shot in the flank like that. So works out nicely for him. But in any case, moving on over to the flank, so you can see the mercenary crossbows right in real close here, and they're starting to do a serious number on my Gondor spearmen. Now, the crossbows don't have a ton of ammunition, but while it lasts, they can do a lot of damage, even to shielded infantry from the front. These guys have an armor upgrade as well, so I think they're sitting at about 9 armor right now. So yeah, very, very effective, but I am still spraying them down with my Carandros marksmen. I've almost killed maybe about half the unit there. Let's take a look at what's going on over here on the flanks. You can see the White Knights have charged headlong into my axemen of Lossarnach and just burst a hole through the center of them. This is a little bit of a micro mistake on my part. What I was trying to do is use my Pynth-Galen cavalry as the hammer to the anvil of my Lossarnach axemen, but unfortunately my timing was very, very off, and so my axemen of Lossarnach are going to pay a very heavy toll for that. But at the same time, I'm going to charge headlong into him with my Pynth-Galen cavalry. Not really the best option, but they do have a fairly hefty charge bonus, so I will be able to maybe knock off a little bit of HP from those White Knights. And at the same time, coming in from the rear with my axemen of Lossarnach. Now, if we look over on this end, looks like the Swan Knights have managed to get in amongst my Lancers, but I think I made them pay quite a heavy toll with some concentrated range fire, so they're actually quite reduced by the time they get over here. And actually, no, check this out. They've actually been going for my archers. I forgot about that. And yeah, they're just running through my line of archers, and I'm trying to pin them in place with my General's Bodyguard and my elite unit of Wardens of the White Tower, using them as a little bit of a reserve here. And I really don't want him to be able to hammer and anvil my Gondor spearmen, because the things are kind of in the balance here on the flank. A nice hammer and anvil strike would be enough to, I think, shift the balance in his favor. And I really want to keep the pressure on him in the center for as long as I can. I want to win that infantry fight, and afterwards his cavalry and his other assets like his archers, not really a big threat to a highly upgraded Gondor force like my own. But yeah, as you can see some of the Elbelon halberdiers there routing from the field after having been surrounded and suffering quite grievously. Over here we got the Black Swan Vanguard naturally leading the way here, being backed up by some civilians, but they are getting crescent mooned right to the ground. So unfortunately for the Elbelon's halberdiers and the Black Swan Knights and everything that he's committed over here, they are completely surrounded, and it's not going to go very well for them. He's actually managed to get in amongst my archers, but that's kind of okay, because the Carados marksmen do hold their own in melee, and they've got decent melee defense as well, so the AP isn't necessarily going to be as big a threat as it could be. Now over here we have a deadly charge from the Knights of the Silver Swan straight on into my infantry, and I'm going to countercharge with some spearmen, and I'm actually focused at firing him now with all of my archers, trying to sweep this cavalry menace from the field. Now this is really the biggest, most deadly portion of his army left now. I don't have a ton of spearmen, which is maybe a little bit strange as Gondor. You can bring out a lot of spears as Gondor, but instead I opted only to have 3 and invested elsewhere. So I really need to take these guys out because I don't have the numbers of spearmen, or even infantry for that matter, to continuously take those vicious lancer charges from the front. And you can see over here another big charge into the flank of my Gondor infantry, who are completely unprepared for it, and they're going to take some pretty hefty losses there from those Knights of the Silver Swan, but they are continuously being focus fired down by everything that I can throw at them, and they are slowly but surely starting to drop, so which is, I think, a good thing. I mean, that much arrow fire should probably cost his cavalry a little bit. So over on this end, I've managed to break his right flank with my left, and I'm going to pursue them across the plains here with my Wardens of the White Tower backed up with some spears. Now, on their own, the Wardens of the White Tower could probably pursue these guys and do a lot of damage, but I really don't want them to be unsupported against this cavalry in the back. And speaking of cavalry, got my General's Bodyguard here in amongst the Dornernal archers, and they're actually holding up the Nimrodel Rangers as well. Now, there's still some hidden archer companies yet to come, but unfortunately, or I guess fortunately for my opponent, he hasn't showed his hand completely yet, but I think now would be a very good time to try and leverage that extra range firepower, because the infantry fight has been a nightmare for him so far. Now over on this end, my Gondor infantry moving forward under the watchful eye of my Gondor spearmen. We're going to slowly but surely get into the back lines, deal with all of his archer companies, cut them down, and then slowly but surely destroy the Dol Amroth forces in detail, because both of us are a little bit scattered right now, but his cavalry is not really able to lend a whole lot of support to his archer companies. And over here you can see actually I'm taking advantage of that by moving in with some of my Pinth Galen cavalry. I'm going to get a nice charge there off on the Dornernal Lancers, narrowly escaping the clutches of those Knights of the Silver Swan. Now, I think we've got a unit of White Knights in the back. Yes, the White Knights still very healthy, 24 men in the unit. I'm doing my best to try and pin them down with my infantry, but they are very swift being cavalry, so it's not exactly an easy thing to do. But my line's a mess right now, but I've got enough forces over there to potentially pin these guys down once they commit. So the White Knights here moving forward towards my Veterans of Gilead. That is going to be a very punishing charge for me. I do have some Axemen of Lossarnac coming in from the rear, and over here I'm going to move in with some of my my previously idle companies of Axemen of Lossarnac and Gondor infantry. So I'm moving in for a big surround here. So if my opponent's not careful, he is going to find himself cut off. Now, they didn't do quite so much damage to my Veterans of Gilead as I thought it would, but again, they are melee cav. These guys are very heavily armored, more than capable of defending themselves in melee. But let's go back over to the other wing. You can see the Knights of the Silver Swan nearly getting themselves routed there by accidentally charging into my unit of Gondor spears. I think they're going after the Axemen of Lossarnac, but I managed to pull them back and move the spears forward, so that we were able to stick the Knights of the Silver Swan with both of those units at once, one an AP, one an anti-cavalry unit. So the rest of his infantry here has been scattered. Got a unit of Pinth Galen cavalry here. Looks like I lost some of my micro, and they're just going to kind of sit there for a little while and not accomplish too much. So my opponent is now going to reveal some of his hidden companies of archers. He's got a unit here of the Blackroot Vale archers, but unfortunately they came into view because my Wardens of the White Tower were nearly on top of them. So you can see some of the Dornernal archers now fleeing from the field. They may reform a little bit later on in the battle and continue to be a pain, but at this point, really it has largely been won by the forces of Gondor. So let's go ahead and let's fast forward a little bit through this one. Ooh, that was a big mistake on my part here. I didn't see or I think I tried to go for his Blackbeard Vale archers, but unfortunately I didn't see that he had a spearman company kind of intervening. So as the Blackbeard Vale archers move through these guys, my cavalry are actually going to meet their ends. Very sticky end indeed at the hands of the Tarnostian Guard, who are going to just impale them on those deadly spears. But now the Tarnostian Guard are completely surrounded, and they're not going to be able to hold for too much longer. Over on the flank, the Knights of the Silver Swan getting a decent enough charge, and they're flattening some of my spearmen. But at this point, I've got enough men left that there's not really a whole lot that he can do to me that I need to be afraid of. Now over here, got the White Knights getting stuck in against my General's Bodyguard. Normally, you don't want to get a Lancer unit stuck in with a unit like White Knights. Melee cav in general, but the White Knights are particularly deadly. But I wanted to try and hold them down a little bit with my general and come in with my infantry. But unfortunately, my opponent Cappy wasn't having it, and he's going to scoot out of there as quickly as he can. He's going to lose a few of his White Knights, though, after he moves through a unit of my Axemen of Sarnak, backed up with my Gondor Spear. So in this battle so far, I think I've done a reasonably good job at supporting important assets of my army to help me zone out his cav. Now, his cav has basically been occupied on the wings or trying to do some damage in my back lines, which it worked a little bit. He did manage to do some fairly decent casualties to some of my units, like the Veterans of Gilead, for example, or some of my Axemen and things like that. But ultimately, it was not where that pressure I think needed to be applied. So the rest of my forces now moving in for a total surround. I'm going to try and bring everybody together, reform so I don't get picked apart in the field by these very pesky units of cavalry. So the Knights of the Silver Swan here managing to link up with the White Knights, and looks like the White Knights were going to go after my Axemen of Sarnak, but luckily for my opponent, he thought a little bit better of it. I'm going to try and get a charge there, but I'm going to miss horribly with my General's Bodyguard, and they're going to move right forward into a unit of my Gondor Spearmen. I'm going to be able to come in from the rear with my General's Bodyguard and pin them now between a unit of spears and my my elite General's Bodyguard. At the same time, moving in with my Axemen as well to lend a little bit of AP to this engagement. But the White Knights are somehow going to be able to slip out of my surround after only having lost one or two of their men. I think maybe 2 or 3. But then everyone's just going to swarm against the White Knights, and that's going to be more or less all she wrote for them. Over here, we got that unit of Knights of the Silver Swan, being a real big pain for my Axemen of Sarnak, nearly routing them, in fact. My spearmen came in at the right time. Oh, there goes the Dol Amroth general as well. My spearmen managed to come in at the right time and lend a little bit of support to them, so the Knights of the Silver Swan were forced to disengage. But yeah, basically at this point, I'm going to kick it up to 6 times speed. Now, from what I understand, it was around this point that we had a desync. So my opponent had a little bit more cavalry than on his end than what you are seeing here, but ultimately the outcome is going to be the same, with my Gondor army ending up as the victors in this battle. So as you can see over here, he's still got a unit of mercenary crossbows, and that was definitely consistent on both of our screens. He's going to use them to put some pressure there into my Gondor spearmen. I'm going to countercharge with my General's Bodyguard. Managed to catch those mercenary crossbowmen out in the field, rout them, and send them fleeing from the battlefield. So at this point, this is where the desync really starts to set in, and instead of the constant cycle charging and trying to get as many kills as possible, his cavalry is kind of just going to sit there, except for the White Knights, who are going to do something very, very silly by moving into the massed ranks of my infantry, and that is going to be ultimately the end of that cavalry unit. So yeah, I'm gonna cut it a little bit here, and then I will rejoin you guys again for the post-battle screen. And there you guys have it. Now, I got about 1,400 kills in that battle, at least 100 or so, I think, are accounted by the Assassins of Sin of the Dark Cloud. But Cappy got about 1,200 as well, so we were basically even kills, although I did have a bit more numbers, and I think it's fair to say that he had some more quality in certain areas, and certainly a lot of archers and things like that. But yeah, I don't mind showing you guys this battle because the outcome would not have been drastically... Wow, let me try that again. Would not have been drastically different, even given the desync that happened pretty well closer to the end. But I hope you guys have enjoyed this so far. I'm going to have another one coming out for you today, which is a 2v2. But I wanted to release this because I know there are certain people out there that have very, very large concerns about how well Gondor is going to do. And since they haven't been featured in any of the battles so far, this was a great time to show them off. So I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you next time. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.